I think we need to start with the one involving the teams that have actually won the Champions League and not the one involving the two clubs that have won as many Champions League titles as Luton Town and Reading combined. And that is Barcelona against Inter. It finished 3-3. Just at the top, I think it's still obviously very, very much open. Inter racing to a 2-0 lead.
Yeah.
And then I just want to fast forward to the Yamal goal. And then what he did moments later when he put Di Marco on his backside. I'm watching this and I say, like, I don't get to see this on my television ever.
Oh, you've seen it with other players, but yeah, to see it that young, for him to be that good. And he had an injury scare during the warm-up. He finished his warm-up early before everybody else, went back to the dressing room. I think there was a bit of a question mark what was happening, and Fermin Lopez was warming up then to start the game, really. So there was a bit of worry there. And then from the first time he touched the ball, you knew that there was nothing wrong at all. And then he had an absolute masterclass that could even have been probably better, because the second half he was a little bit quieter, and it's normal because you just can't dominate everybody for 90 minutes. Nobody does it. But incredible, man. 100th game for Barcelona at 17.
Inter race out to a 2-0 lead. Your boy Marcus Thuram scoring within a minute.
Yeah, lovely goal.
I thought at 2-0 in the first half, Inter coming off of 3 straight defeats. We need to put this in context.
Yeah.
Marcus Thuram starting and scoring, despite the fact he'd had one training session in the previous 2 weeks. And then I thought Inter just sat too deep and invited too much.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can do that for 90 minutes. Yamal pulls it out of his backside. And then, of course, they get the second goal. Clearly a mistake from Bisek and Acerbi. Take your pick. But Barcelona did well to get back into the game. Did they fall off a little bit in the second half, or was it the fact that Inzaghi was brave? They were more aggressive.
They played higher up. Yeah. Inter, you're right. We're not going to defend like they did in the first half, in the second half, because I think that was a mistake. But maybe when you're 2-0 up after 20 minutes in a game where you expected to suffer a lot and to have to cope with the pressure, maybe then that, again, we say it very often, but that changes your game plan. When you score within the first minute, you're aware of Barcelona. Even subconsciously, I think that does it. But you also knew that Barcelona were going to score. They always score anyway, right? They always score. And they could have scored more. And to be fair, Inter in the second half were also braver with the ball, I thought, with the high line, and could have scored more. I mean, the Mkhitaryan goal is a toe offside.
Yeah.
And he is offside, but it's a toe offside. So it could have gone even in a different way, which obviously the 3-3 leaves us perfectly for the second leg.
I don't want to emphasize the negatives because there was so much positive, so much entertainment in this. But I don't remember a team, going so deep in the Champions League that has so many issues defending and really embracing that kind of will outscore you. We've said it before. It's not just about the high line. Also set pieces. Barcelona just not very effective on set pieces. I think they only had 2 corners. Had they had more, who knows? But that is kind of what they started exploiting a lot better in the second half. Can we just put this issue to rest about the high line? This is part of what makes Barcelona good, and it's part of what makes them vulnerable. I have no problem whatsoever saying we're going to try to beat you this way. It is a strategy. There's no point banging Flick over the head with it.
No. I don't think he would care even if you bang him on the head with it. This is his philosophy. Bayern was like that, and the Flick. And they were very successful. It's only the first season. So this is not going to change. It's not even going to be adjusted or tweaked. This is going to be like that, even with the injuries, because they also lost Koundé and Gerard Martin again when they were already without Balde. So, Eric Garcia right back, Inigo Martinez at left back. It's not as good as when you've got your strongest back four, but they will keep playing the same way, even with Inigo at left back and Eric Garcia at right back.
How do we see this set up for the return leg? There's a chance Lewandowski might come back.
Yeah,
I think it's highly unlikely that Ballon d'Or Lautaro. And by the way, Inter also had their absences, losing him at halftime, and obviously Pavard at the back too. I like to think Pavard might have done a slightly better job than Bisek did for that Ferran Torres goal. Is it still a toss up for you?
Yeah, I think we see exactly the same game in Milan. I don't know if it'll be a 3-3, a 2-2, 2-1, 3-1, whatever, but there's no way those teams are going to change the way they play. And yeah, Inter will probably not be as deep, especially at home, but it's all to play for. And I think we'll have pretty much exactly the same than we had on Wednesday night.
I lean Barcelona a little bit because they have the luxury of playing Valladolid this weekend, whereas Inter facing Verona, still chasing, of course, Napoli at the top of the table. But we're going to break this down further on the Gab and Juls show. And I'm going to ask Jules, when Lamine Yamal hit the crossbar a second time, I like to believe he meant it. All right, Jules, let's get this out of the way. I choose to believe that Lamine Yamal did not miss-hit that cross when he hit the woodwork the second time.
Yeah.
That he was not looking for Rafinha, that he somehow magically hit the ball so it would loop all the way up in the air and then almost accelerate when it comes down.
Yeah, I think you've answered your own question, Gab. You don't really believe what you're saying. But it's okay. Like, I think he was, but the way his position his body is not for sure anyway. And he fluffs it completely. But I like the fact that he's trying to look for the cross, because I think a more selfish player would have tried to hit that. But the fact that he went, and it's clearly the best option, is to try to go for Rafinha, not to shoot from there. And certainly not the way the ball is coming in his position. So I like that. I just think his decision making, not just on that move, because in the end it didn't really work, but on everything, I think his decision making for his age is incredible. Probably better than anybody that we've seen, apart from the Messi and etc. But I just think that at that age, when you do the right thing all the time or almost all the time, it's really impressive.
It's the decision making, I think, that sets him apart, because we're both too young to have seen Pelé and even Maradona at that age. I think we both remember Messi and Cristiano at that age. Phenomenal players. We can debate whether they were better at that age than Yamal or not. We can have that debate. There's arguments to be made for both, because people say, oh, look, Yamal's ahead of Messi at that age. Well, Messi had a guy named Ronaldinho who was the best player in the world on his team. Yamal does not. So it also means more opportunities. But I think in terms of maturity and decision-making, those guys, Cristiano and Messi, when they were 17, they sometimes made mistakes. Because that's what 17-year-olds do. They make the wrong decisions. They try to dribble too much. Both of them, by the way. It's not just ball hog Cristiano or however you want to describe him. Yamal generally does not make the wrong decision. And it's like he has a computer in his brain. Yeah. And I mean, yesterday we had... I was also watching with the tactical camera, so the one from the really wide angle, so we could see him all the time. And sometimes on the normal television, they follow the ball naturally. But when we could watch it all the time, he's just asking for the ball all the time. He shows he wants it all the time, because also I think he could tell last night he was in the zone, really. And poor Di Marco, even when Mkhitaryan was coming across, or Bastoni, they just could not handle him. So I think when you feel that good and that confident, you probably want even more the ball, because you know you can go out again and make differences. But still, he was always there. He always wanted the ball. But even his positional play is so perfect, because he could come inside a bit more to get even closer to the ball. For example, when the ball is on the other side, I know, he's quite disciplined. He stays because he knows the ball is going to come eventually. He's the best player in that team. But still, it's just like I was gobsmacked, really. And I think Inzaghi said he's a player that you see every 50 years, and I think he's right. And maybe 50 is a bit too much, but certainly every generation, and some generation won't have one, but really, this is how amazing he is. Yeah. So he obviously, after games, you go and you coaches, well, you're gonna lift the lid on what happens behind the scenes. Coaches give interviews to rights holders, and then they talk on the press conference. They generally get asked the same questions, so they give the same answers or versions of the same answers. In the very first flash he did, he said, I haven't seen anybody this good in 8 or 9 years. And then I think later on, maybe he realized that he might have Messi or Cristiano's people on the phone. So he changed it to a player's born every 50 years. Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you flat out. Messi and Cristiano were born roughly 20 years ago. Yeah. Should he have said every 20 years, or do you think? Yeah, that's why I said 30. I think if he said 50. He definitely said 50. Yeah, but that's why I said 30, because I think the generation is 30 years, really, pretty much. We can take between 20 and 30.
I think that if you look, okay, there might not be, but still, if you do Pelé, Maradona, Cristiano, and Messi on the same one, and then it could be him, And I know they're big names, of course, and I know this, and it's early. We said 100 game. He has, I think, almost just below 50 goals involvement in those first 100 games. So it's impressive. I mean, Messi had more, but we don't need slightly more, not much more, but slightly more. So need more goals from Messi after 100 games for Barcelona than Lamine has. But I don't know, the only thing Gabi was thinking last night as well, should you really have played 100 games at 17? Because Messi was older, obviously, when he reached the 100 game mark. It feels a lot. It feels like in the 2 years since he made his debut, when he was still 15 and almost 16, but still only 15. And now he's already played so much football, a high intensity, high pressure.
Are you fearing a Pedri situation?
I don't know. I hope not. And I don't know. He looks very solid physically. But I'm just saying, 100 games at 17 years old, man.
Yeah. And this is where, if you're Lamine's family, his agent, people who care about him, you have to put your trust in Barcelona, I would assume. Have sports science, psychologists, and obviously doctors who look at this and say, yes, he can handle this, or no, he can't handle that. That is the big question, right? All these guys play a lot of games. Inter played a lot of games. Barcelona played a lot. Arsenal all played a lot of games this season. Obviously, your physiology at that age is often different. Or maybe not. Maybe he's a fully formed adult at 17. Yeah. Kids develop at different sizes. There's some kids who, stop growing after a certain age. Others keep growing, right up into their early 20s. So these are all things that I think need to be weighed up. One thing that struck me was in the second half, obviously Inzaghi made the change. He brought on Carlos Augusto, at least fresh legs. Got a prayer to stay with him. Barcelona you said he was in the zone. I think he dropped off a little bit in the second half.
No, in the first half, certainly. Yeah, second half, not as good.
Barcelona just kept looking for him, I felt, all the time. And I don't know if it was maybe a flaw in Barcelona, or if it was actually, we should be praising Inter for shutting down the other avenues, right? So when we would expect the creativity to come from Pedri, we would expect we would have expected it to come from Balde on the left-hand side. Obviously, he wasn't there. It's not going to happen. Once you put Inigo Martinez, nothing is happening there. But I saw Dani Olmo while he was on the pitch, Rafinha, Fermin when he came on. In terms of creating game, it seemed like everybody's just looking to Yamal for Barcelona. Is that because Inter shut off the other avenues, or is this...
Yeah, no, I think...
Others don't step up?
Because it was so congested in central areas, because that's what Inter were doing, and they were so compact that you had to go wide. And certainly for the first half, when Martin was still on the pitch, that left-hand side was for him, and Rafinha was coming inside, which they always do, especially more with Balde. But on the right, it's for Lamine. And I think because in the first half he was so influential, obviously, as we said, and making so many differences, then in the second half, you kind of look for him still, even if he doesn't have the same impact on the game. But that's why also they slowed down in the second half, because Inter defended better and higher. We've said that already.
And I think Barcelona also tired 120 minutes of Clásico.
On Saturday,
will take a lot out of you, even though this is obviously a much younger team than Inter as well. When I think back to the chances, I tell myself this game could have finished 6-3 to Inter, or it could have finished 6-3 to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Jan Sommer made some tremendous saves. Obviously, the one when he puts Di Marco on his backside was huge. He had a couple other ones as well. That's just the nature of the game. This is what we want to see.
Yeah.
Or does your Jules Catenaccio inside you make you say,
no, a little bit, because I think, Barca, as we said, too high defensively, the line, maybe a bit too exposed sometimes, and Inter in this first half, especially too deep, inviting the pressure, which for a team against a team like Barcelona, they will create chances even if you don't invite the pressure. But if you invite the pressure even more, then of course it will come. So I just love the way that game went. And I think if you're Inzaghi, you look at it today and you watch it again, or maybe even straight after the game last night, and you think, okay, there's a lot of things we could have done better defensively, certainly. And if you're Flick, you're thinking, going forward, the first half was good, But the second half could have been better, like you said, Gabby. They could not really find what worked for them in that second half. Because really the Rafinha goal comes from a set piece. He can try another 50 times. I'm not sure really he scored. And to be fair, it's again...
It's a low XG shot,
Yeah,
I think.
but to put that way. And it's an own goal for Sommer, Paul Sommer, because he has a fingertip on it and then next. So, yeah, I think both managers would be happy in a way, and also thinking already like there's a lot of things we could have done better and that we will try to do better in the second leg.
I think this is a massive confidence boost for Inter, because you cannot escape the fact 3 consecutive defeats, including the derby against Milan in the Coppa Italia. You wondered, a lot of us wondered, is this where the season unravels? That said, to go back to the argument of, I don't want to make it about the high line. I want to talk about the intelligence to exploit it. 3 different occasions, I thought I expected them to score. The first one with Thuram, where Kubarsi makes the recovery. I mean, fit Thuram. First of all, Kubarsi doesn't catch him, and he gets a shot off. I don't know if he scores, but I like his chances from there. The other one, the ball over the top, when Gerard Martin actually handles it, and it doesn't get called.
Oh, Inigo, I think it was...
It was Gerard Martin who handled it.
Was the second half, no?
It was in the first half.
Okay.
And in fact, actually, the ball still falls for Barella. What I don't understand is, dude, I appreciate you looking for the handball. You've seen the handball. You can still get to the ball. Get to the ball and score.
He stops and appeals,
That was a rare bad call from Barella. And then obviously the Mkhitaryan one. So a lot of opportunities there. And I'm wondering if you're Inter to take it on further, what you have to do is exploit your physical edge, especially on dead balls and dead ball situations. Because I think this is really an issue for Barcelona. There's no way they can match up with those big boys.
I think they conceded 7 or 8 goals already in all competition on set pieces. I think Inter have scored 15 or 16 now in all competition as well, which is very high. It's almost as high as not just Arsenal, but not far from it. So clearly, and as we saw in the game on Wednesday, Chesney is nowhere to be seen on the second Dumfries goal. The first one, they defend poorly. So it was full efficiency on set pieces from Inter. And you believe that if you have more, then you can threat them more even without.
Final point on this, we both agree Inter need to have more of the ball in the first leg. In the return 35. Leg, they will.
They scored the first 2 goals after 4 touches in the box, and they scored 2 goals. This will never happen. It won't happen again.
Right, but they could have had the other ones later, so it's not.
But then by then they had more. They had more presence in the box. They had more touches in the box.
Exactly, they were further up. Initial strategy, not so the right thing. I think a lot's going to depend on whether Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who I did not think had a great game last night, and he did a lot of chasing around, a lot of defensive work. If they get him back in the space of a week, which is a big ask to have the Çalhanoğlu of old, if Thuram continues to improve. And obviously, if there's a chance that Ballon d'Or Lautaro plays even a little bit, then I think that might switch the balance back. Last point on this. On the FC show last night, there was a suggestion made, I think it was from Ali, that actually Barcelona with Lewandowski in a game like this aren't necessarily better off. The argument being that you have a guy who obviously doesn't press or move much anymore, stuck among 3 big center backs, as opposed to Ferran Torres and his movement. Do you buy that?
No, I disagree. And I think they crossed the ball a lot, almost like if Lewandowski was there, and I think he would have been much better in the air. And also, when you have 70% of the ball, you do counter pressing. You don't press. Inter so low. Their block is so low that you don't...
In the first half it was.
Yeah. But even in the second half, really, they played a bit higher up, but there was not much chasing of the ball from Ferran Torres. So no, I think it was a big miss. Really, they would have been, for me, certainly, like they would have been better with him.
In fact, the one time Ferran Torres got away, he scored.
Yeah.
To make it 2-2. All right, enough Yamal. Although I don't think we will ever get enough of Yamal if he plays like that. Arsenal against Paris Saint-Germain. This is the other leg. Paris Saint-Germain winning 1-0. Now, it's funny. I'll give you my impression as very much a neutral in this one. I thought to myself, if you rewatch the highlights, if I'm Lucho, I'm really, really angry that I didn't win. Sorry, let me put it differently. It's the opposite of that, actually. At the end of the game, I thought, all right, I'm Lucho. I'm going to be furious that I didn't win by more goals because I really could have, put Arsenal down under 6 feet under in this game. And I'm annoyed with Gonzalo Ramos and Barcola for the late chances and so on. But then you rewatch the highlights and then you see that Donnarumma made some huge saves as well. Was this game actually more balanced than I imagined it? Or was my initial impression that Paris Saint-Germain actually wiped the floor with Arsenal incorrect?
No, it was correct, but only for the first 25 minutes, really. And they, at the first 25 minutes, there's just no match. PSG are outplaying them. The stats are terrible from an Arsenal point of view. They have 20% of the ball. They can't do two passes together.
2 shots before minute 39. The Kivior header and then Saka just belting him from 40. At that point, I thought Saka said, we have to take a shot. Let me just chuck this one away, see what happens.
But then I think it leveled up, really. And after that, the game, there's not much into it. I mean, at the end, Arsenal have a higher XG than PSG. And they had those two massive saves from Donnarumma on Martinelli at the end of the first half and on Trossard at the start of the second half. So I think it could have turned slightly in a different way. I still think that the score reflects well overall the whole 90 minutes. But there was not much between the two teams, I felt.
The Martinelli save, by the way, I was watching the post-game on Sky Italia, and it's a Techers corner, so that's why I'm sharing this with you.
Yeah.
He opens up his body, and he's not going to go near post.
So early, and they said, I could see from where I was sat in the stadium, he was going to put it there.
All right, I could not, but they said a top player just buries it at the near post.
Yeah.
Kylian Mbappe in that position, it's in the top corner, and there's nothing that Donnarumma can do.
Yeah, I think that's why for me the most impressive of the two is the second one on Trossard, because Trossard onto his left foot as well doesn't give you much indication. He could go near post, he could go across like he ended up doing, and that's why for me that one is even better. Yeah.
Did Paris Saint-Germain? Was it a case of, because it looked to me? I mean, they what's so impressive about somebody who only really gets to see them in Europe and in highlights, let's face it, or against much worse opposition when I do watch Ligue 1 most of the time. Is it a case that they can alternate the possession game with kind of the counter pressing and whatnot in a way that very few other teams do, and they do it with such energy?
Yeah, I mean, the intensity is.
But how did that
makes them?
And is it a case that they simply, you're not going to keep that intensity for 90 minutes, or is it a case that Arteta somehow blunted them in the second half?
Yeah, so the little trick from Arteta is that Arsenal signed pressing 4-4-2, which they always do. This is what they do. And that left a bit too much space for Dembele, for example, dropping deep. And so then they moved into a 4-2-3-1 shape without the ball out of possession, especially in their pressing. And that worked a little bit better, especially against Vitinha, Neves and Ruiz. But overall, the strength of this PSG team is that intensity, is the counter-pressing. Although Arsenal ran 6K more than PSG on Tuesday night overall, which it's a big number, 6K. There's usually not that much between teams of a similar level, especially at this level. So
when you pass the ball, 24 times, 26 times? I've seen different numbers.
For the first goal,
For the first goal.
I counted 26 to be fair, but I saw
whatever
27,
it is.
Yeah. But the first 25 minutes... I think it's a very long time since I've seen a team playing that well and walking all over Arsenal at the Emirates. Really, we have to go back to one of the great City teams or one of Klopp's teams. But it just doesn't happen. Arsenal are so strong at home, and yet they could not get near them. Really, Timber and Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, the midfield three. Really, there was Saka against Nuno Mendes. There was no way for Arsenal. And then I think where Arsenal deserve a lot of credit, Gab, is that it could have been like that, not maybe through the whole game, because you can't do that for 90 minutes. But they corrected it. And then, like we said, it was far more level for the rest hour of this game.
I am so impressed with Kvaratskhelia in the way that, this is a guy who basically didn't really play for 6 months. And he has a unique skill set as well. He's not a plug and play type of player. For Lucho to get him halfway through the season, to stick him into this team, to make him already do from day one what he wants, that it's a testament to Kvara's professionalism, but it also says a lot about Lucho's abilities as a coach.
Yeah, I wonder what would have happened if they got him in the summer like they wanted to, and if he'd been there already since July, for example, and how better it would be now, how better the team would have been earlier in the season instead of waiting for kind of mid-December and then January when he arrived. We would obviously never know. But again, Timber has been so good for Arsenal since especially after the injury. And the first 15 minutes, he had such a horrid time. I don't know how he didn't get at least a yellow card. Then after that, it was a bit better, to be fair. But like the rest of the team, the first 15 minutes were very difficult.
All right, Jules, one goal is nothing. We don't know what's going to happen at the Parc des Princes. We could see Declan Rice scored another 2 free kicks from 40 meters out. And I'm already on the record. I've already said this. Arsenal screwed up, and it might have cost them the Premier League title, maybe more, when they didn't bring in cover after Gabriel Jesus was injured. And obviously, Kai Havertz goes down and blah, blah, blah. In this game, they had an additional challenge. Obviously, they got Merino to play up front. I think he scored 6 goals in 12 games, something like that. It's a good return. I still think it has affected them tremendously in the way they play. But at least it was the way they played. In this game, Arteta felt that he had to, he had to readjust things because Jorginho not fully fit, and I don't even think he was on the bench. Thomas Partey suspended for this game. You look around, so he moved Rice in front of the back four. He moved Merino back into that kind of inside left position, and he put Trossard up front, which again changes from the Merino setup because obviously Trossard, very different type of player, different physically, different movement. And it means Rice in front of the back four. And I think we're in agreement with this. That's not Rice's best position.
No,
if you're in a team where you got a creative 10, and you might argue that Odegaard should be that, maybe you get away with Rice kind of defending and making runs forward. But when he is on his own back there and he has to defend and he has to break the press, he struggles. It's just not his game. I second guess this all the time, but people who are deep into Arsenal go back to Miles Lewis-Skelly and how he was that central midfielder.
Yeah.
Just purely hypothetically, maybe you couldn't do it in this game because Ben White wasn't fully fit and there was no Calafiori. You would have needed a left back. Is this something that we might see more regularly? Because I take it for red that they're going to bring in a central midfielder, and it's Taco Zubimendi, obviously. But if they don't,
I don't know as a holding midfielder, really. I know how good Miles is on the ball and great, and that midfielder is more of his position than left back for sure. For me, he has the box-to-box skills, not a holding midfielder skills. And I know he's press resistant. There's a difference between being press resistant as a number 8 and being press resistant as a number 6. And I can't see him play as a 6. I can see him play as an 8 in this team, for sure. And you could have... There's a scenario where you could have Partey, Zubimendi, whoever you want in front of the back four, and then Rice on the right. So let's say Odegaard is injured or something. Rice and Lewis-Skelly there. And I think, because I also think that Lewis-Skelly, as we see on the Martinelli chance, the higher he is on the pitch, the more influential he will be because he has that quality of passes. He sees the game really well. He's so strong and, again, press resistant. Then if you play him in front of your back four, he's going to be deep naturally. And I think, again, you will lose a bit of what he can bring you.
So he's not a Jorginho passer.
No, for me, he's an 8 every day. And I think that's
is that what he did at youth level? Was he more of an 8?
Yeah, it was more of the one that would bomb forward with the ball too. But again, it was easy for him.
The other alternative...
But the Partey absence was huge. I felt it on Tuesday, really. The Dembele goal, there's that massive hole there because Rice and Merino are not really... where they should be, and I think Arsenal are going to be much better next week with Partey back.
It's funny because, again, dialing back to the summer, I thought, okay, Merino's there. He can also play in front of the back four and be a passer. He's a good passer. He's played deeper before. Clearly, Arteta didn't see him that way this season because, he used him differently. I did think about Nwaneri, but again, and then I have to remind myself, the guy's 17 years old. As good as he is, I know so is Lewis-Skelly and so is Lamine Yamal, but dropping him, it's not an automatic thing, right? It's always, I said, what if you dropped him in the inside left position and kept Merino at center forward? And maybe you've Trossard off the bench. Because there was a moment in time when you looked at the Arsenal bench and you saw kind of Ben White because he's tallish and Raheem Sterling, who is not going to come on.
Yeah.
I mean, would that have been an alternative?
I don't know. I think you need a bit of a defensive side of you to play as an 8 in a game like this against the PSG midfield three, that where I thought I was standing. I mean, Vitinha has 100% pass accuracy in a Champions League semi-final away from home. You don't miss pass a single ball. He lost 6 balls, and one of them at the end that Rice like just took in front of him, and Martinelli ended up shotting over the bar. But 100% successful passes, I just think. And Neves was outstanding. Ruiz was great. And I think for that, Nwaneri maybe is just not ready to have the defensive side that goes with being a number 8 too. And even if he's more attacking, even Odegaard kind of like has a little bit of that now. So I don't know. But it's true that if you can bring on Barcola or Gonzalo Ramos, like PSG did, and then on the other side is White and Nwaneri, you also see that in terms of depth, which is also down to injuries. It's not just how you build your squad. But yeah, there was surely one bench stronger than the other.
If the best on earth had been there, maybe it might have been a different story, right?
Absolutely.
The Donnarumma piece, he's had ups and downs. He's had that horrible Safanov with a stupid man bun, playing one game. I get the sense that there are a lot of people who still question him, whether he's right for Paris Saint-Germain. Obviously, he's not very good with his feet. Yeah. That is a part of, ideally, in a perfect world. But that said, I thought those, especially the Trossard save.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that's what put Paris Saint-Germain in the driving seat.
Yeah. And
is he top 5?
Yeah, I think he is. He has 1 year left on his contract, and I think for a long time the club was not sure to extend him or to try to replace him and sell him. And now it feels like suddenly on Tuesday what I was being told was that it looks very much like he wants to stay, they want to keep him, and the distribution is not going to improve much because it's not now 26 that he's going to become suddenly Ederson, right? It's either you have it or you don't really. You can work on it and get a bit better, and I think he is a bit better. And on crosses, I think it's a little bit the same. It's either you're very good at it and you read it well or you work on it and you get a bit better, but you never become the best at coming out on crosses and stuff. So you have to take that as it is, but on his line, for me, there's maybe just Courtois, just on the line in terms of reflexes for someone who's 6'5", 1m96 or 97, whatever it is. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I think he has a future.
There was one chance. What's really funny for a guy with that build is the agility, not just getting down quickly, but there was one chance where I think every goalkeeper in the world would have gone with his feet to save, when it was like sort of splayed out. Instead, he goes down and collects it with his hands. There's a certain lack of orthodoxy, I think, with the way he plays goalkeeper as well. And it's crazy because he's been a starter for 10 years and he's only 26 years old.
Yeah. And he's so calm, I think. So calm. And for somebody from the south of Italy as well, I'm not sure that they are all very calm, but he's got that. And the scar that he got, obviously, in that Monaco game, we've mentioned many times before, made him look like, I don't know, like a bit scary, but he's so not scary. He looks very gentle, despite being big. But that scar is just a little bit out of character for him, really. Not that it was his fault, but yeah.
All right. So we both agree the Barcelona Inter game is a toss-up. Maybe I said 50.5 to Barcelona last night simply because of what happens this weekend.
Yeah.
With Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal, are we going to be ready to play for the percentage game?
Don't know. I mean, the French are certainly getting carried away a bit, I think. On my radio show after the game, the radio show that I do, people were like, it's 80-20 for PSG. They were so good, which is true. They were very good. Le Parisien front page is like they've got a foot in the final already. L'Equipe's front page is like they're close to the stars now. I'm a bit more cautious, I think, because I really believe after the first half hour, 25 minutes that we mentioned, there's not much really. I think they're fine margins. But PSG have the upper hand because they have the goal right now, the advantage of that goal. But I would go, personally, I'd go 60-40.
I think, 60-40 sounds about right. I might go a little bit less, but I think what they need, you talk about your big players in big games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, okay, for me, Arsenal's big players who win games for you are Saliba, Odegaard, and Saka. And Saliba, I thought, was fine. It's not an easy. It's not easy. You've got Kiwior there on one side. With all due respect to Kiwior, but obviously on the ball, and he doesn't have the same chemistry with Kiwior that he has with Gabriel. You've got these guys running all over the place, pressing you. You're supposed to. You normally look after the center forward, but it's Dembele, and he's literally all over the pitch. It's not, and you don't have your defensive midfield. You don't have that outlet. You have to get stressed more. David Raya, when they were pressing against him, it felt like he touched the ball like 100 times more than he usually does. We know he's good on the ball. But part of that is because you don't have Partey or Jorginho there in front of the back four.
I think he missed Partey too. I think the PSG midfield did a good job on him. Vitinha most of the time, but the other two as well. There's so much fluidity in that PSG midfield. But he hasn't been very good the whole season. It's not new. It's not like if he'd been on fire for the last 2 months and then on Tuesday he was not as good as he'd been. He hadn't really been. This is not a very good season for him, for his standards. And that has also an impact on the team. I thought the ball took too long to go to Saka, for example. When he's your best player, the ball has to go there quick.
But you nailed it. Especially now, he has to be good. He has to step up because there's no Kai Havertz. And not everybody loves him as much as I do, but fundamentally, there is no center forward. And there's no... Even if it's Partey in there, you're not going to get help in that situation. Declan Rice can do a lot for you. He cannot do that. So then it comes down to Saka. And Saka can't do it on his own. So you have to have that other force that he was perhaps 2 years ago. But man, I am so hyped and amped for next week. Inter Miami are out. OUT out of the CONCACAF Champions League, beaten by the mighty Vancouver.
That's right.
Jules, this is a pretty heavy defeat on aggregate.
Yeah, I think it is. They had lost the first leg 2-0 in Vancouver, and then they were back in Miami. I think that the expectations were that 2-0 was not too impossible to overturn, really, when you've got this team and when you have Messi, especially in the form, still the great form that he's in. And I think they were shocked with that. I think they were shocked how good Vancouver were on the night. They won 3-1 in Miami, despite Miami and Jordi Alba scoring the first goal after 10 minutes, where it felt like the remontada was on, really. And after that, especially defensively, Inter were not good enough. And I think this is a massive disappointment to start with, because really that was the one I think that Messi wanted to win, probably more even than MLS itself. And in those big games now, this is not the first time we saw that in the playoffs last season. And they clearly struggled to get those key moments right.
He won the Supporters' Shield. I guess he'll just have to win the Club World Cup, which of course, which of course they qualify for. But winning the Supporters' Shield, this is a blow for the CONCACAF Champions League. Obviously,
you could have had a semi-final, so they were not. They were obviously very close to the final.
The final is just not going to be the same thing with Vancouver.
And Gab, do you know also who is out of his own Champions League? Cristiano Ronaldo was also knocked out with Al Nassr of the Asian Champions League in the semi-final, at the same stage of the semi-final last night.
Yeah, he took to social media and he talked about, I think, dreams being shattered, something like that, or our dream. Cristiano's had a lot of dreams. I think Cristiano's dream is simply winning, succeeding.
Scoring goals and winning.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's all it is. He did have a chance late on. But Kawasaki were really, really good.
Were good.
For those who don't know, this game's they have a different in Asia. What they do is they have an East section and a West section. And then they all come together in the football hotbed that is Jeddah to go and play this final stage. So they're going to take on Al Ahly and Matthias Geisler in the final.
Yeah,
it's interesting because Al Ahly, when all the big players started moving over, Matthias Geisler and Al Ahly, they said, no, we're going to take some of the younger top players, they'll pay them a ton of money, and I think clearly rewarded here. By the way, your boy John Duran, has a really, really bad, bad miss. Could have been the equalizer.
Time. Yeah, it could have been the equalizer.
Huge news out of Ligue 1. L'Equipe reporting that DAZN are walking away from their TV deal. We've been talking about all year about this. And Ligue 1 have told clubs not to budget for any domestic TV income next year.
Yeah, because they will meet with the famous DNCG that we mentioned regularly enough, or their accounts. And they're saying like, listen, we want to see your accounts and don't budget anything for next season because we don't know yet what's going to happen. It's true. So the zone will stop. They will pay the remaining 140 million they owe for their rights for this season. Then they will pay a fine as well, very likely to be around 100 million euros.
Sorry, just a legal term. You can see why you would call it a fine, maybe in French, but it's a severance. It's basically their penalty for breaking
the penalty.
the
Penalty
contract.
is a better word than the fine, because obviously they're not going to pay the remaining 2 years of their contract, and basically from a Ligue 1 point of view, you're back from scratch, or back to the beginning before you sold the rights to the zone. What do you do next? I think they're hoping that Canal Plus comes back into the mix, or they create their own channel that maybe can be then Canal Plus could broadcast as part of the. You said to me earlier what the word Canal Plus, where you can have other channels, distribution deals, exactly. So I think there's possibilities there. But yeah, it's just not that uncertainty. I think is
the reason
really
this story
bad.
is important is because every football broadcaster in the world, every sports league in the world is looking at this because it's never been done in a league as big as this one, about the possibility of the league producing their own games, kind of like the WWE does. They produce their own spectacles. Of course, that's all scripted, whereas football's not. It's all real. And the idea that, hey, what if the Premier League says, we're going to do our own thing and we're going to sell direct to the consumer, right? Yeah. We're going to bypass the traditional broadcasters, whether it's Sky, NBC, ESPN, whatever. Can it work? And nobody's had the courage to do this thus far, because what the broadcasters give you is they give you a lot of marketing and they give you upfront money. So I think this is really interesting. It's really brave. I believe, should we give it, this is what John Textor, the great visionary John Textor wanted to do all along. And the evil Nassr and his little poodle LeBrun, right? Refusing to do that. We're joking, of course, Vincent and Nassr. But do you think it can work? I mean, will people subscribe directly? Do they? I guess they would still have costs. You still have to pay somebody to produce the games, right?
Yeah. But if to subscribe to the Ligue 1 channel, you pay 20 euros, for example. Even if you've got 1 million subscriber, that it doesn't come near even the DAZN deal. So for the club, I don't know. I mean, financially, I'm not sure if it's a good idea. I don't know if it's viable. Like, how many subscribers can you expect from a country like France, like 65 million people or something? 2 million at €20 a month.
480 million a year.
But even that, still, that's a
and
kind
you
of
have production
level.
costs on top. You'd have production costs on top of that.
So beIN Sports said they could produce the matches, and then obviously, so there's a lot of things they can do, I think.
But beIN then would take a cut of the revenue, right? Because they're not going to produce it for free.
So let's see where it goes. I don't know.
I should point out too, for those who've never been to France, it's a tremendous footballing nation, but far too many rugby and cycling fans and people who just don't care. Really,
we know passionate.
Do not care at all about sports at all.
Exactly. Mauricio Sarri is the latest name to be linked with the Milan coaching job. Gab, you happy with this? Do you like
no,
this?
not right for Milan. Definitely not.
What's he been doing, by the way? Do we know?
He's been unemployed.
Yeah, but like, has he been doing some cycling, for example, like vineyards?
I think he's been smoking and drinking coffee. Those are his favorite pastimes.
He would come back in great mood then.
Eric Dyer is on the move. He's joining Monaco as a free agent. Smart pickup, Jules. Look, we know about Monaco. Smart scouting, young players, and so on. What's the deal here?
They wanted experience. Remember back in January when they wanted Jordan Henderson?
Why don't you just bring back Camille Glick?
Yeah. If only he still played football, that could be an idea. But yeah, it's a similar kind of move. He's 31. He was out of contract in the summer. And they gave him a 3-year deal, which might be a little bit long or longish, let's put it that way. But, I mean, come on, if you're Eric Dyer and you can move to Monaco, tax-free, because obviously for foreigners, there's no taxes, living in Monaco for a team that should play Champions League football next season, a really good team with good youngsters, and yet they will lose probably an Akliouche or maybe a Ben Seguir or, like those kind of players. But it's still going to be a very good team. So he was very happy. And he says that Bayern wanted to keep him, which I don't know if it's true or not. But
Yeah, but it's
Monaco
like we
are very
want to
happy.
keep you, but on our terms.
Yeah, probably like that. And Monaco are very happy that they signed him. So well done. Let's see how it goes. The Athletic reports that there are another 200 layoffs, coming at Manchester United, and some are on the football side.
So, well, first of all, if the 200 layoffs happen, that means that they will have cut their workforce by more than 30%.
Wow.
Which is pretty remarkable. I mean, people say, oh, they're overstaffed. There's too many people here who are lazy and so on. I don't know about that. But for a club the size of Manchester United, I mean, they had more than 1,000 employees, but so do Liverpool. It's a question of are they doing their job? And for a long time, they had some of the highest revenues in the world, despite not really having been that good since Fergie, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they finished second a couple times, but so it's another big call. I'm sure it's going to win your buddy Jim more friends.
Yeah, more friends.
What I find interesting is he says reportedly their chief scout has left. They're going to cut back on the scouting department. And I find this extraordinary. And you can look at this and say, haha, this is part of the problem. Is they had 2 years ago, they had 140 scouts
Can you
on
imagine?
their books. Now they're down to 80. And they want to cut it further, become more data driven. When I think about bad management, investing on scouts makes sense.
Yeah.
If the scouts have input. And the way this club has been run, this is I think the worst indictment. If you're paying all these scouts, and in the end, it's whoever Eric Ten Hag is familiar with, or his son, or it's Jose Mourinho, and signing Pogba, obscure players like Pogba and Ibrahimovic that you really need to scout.
Yeah.
Then you have a problem. Then you have a serious problem. So while we often make fun of them, if they are going to take this seriously and invest in other things, fine. But I was shocked. I mean, 80 scouts.
They don't cost you much because you don't pay them much. But still, if you have that many, it ends up costing you a lot.
Well, the other risk is, and again, should we lift the lid? Yeah, let's lift the lid a little bit on how this stuff works, right? So those 80 scouts, you're going to have X amount of people who will basically only be scouting young players locally, right? And then you're going to have scouts around the world. And you're saying you don't pay them very much. And it's true. You probably have a core of 3 or 4 guys who are based in Manchester who travel around, and those guys get paid a respectable wage. The problem with the other guys, they probably have people in South America, probably somebody in Australia. I'm not picking on you if you're the United Scout in Australia, okay? So they probably don't pay this guy a lot, but they pay his expenses, and so he travels around.
Yeah.
What often happens, and not saying this is what you're doing, United Scout in Australia, whoever you are, if the guy's getting paid £8,000, £10,000 a year, dollars a year, plus expenses for Manchester United just to watch football, he's not going to be able to pay his rent. And so since he's already at all these games, a lot of these guys start freelancing a little bit, right? It's completely normal for scouts. So he might work for United, but then, Saint-Etienne, again, not picking on you, Saint-Etienne, sorry, Ivan, might say, hey, good day, mate, in Australia. I know you're already at the Melbourne City game for United, but you want to keep an eye on this right back and send us a report? He says, sure. And that's how things kind of get lost and diluted. And the reality for United, you're signing a caliber of player. Certainly it's senior player. It's slightly different with younger players. That you don't need this army of people to scout. Speaking of young players, Paris Saint-Germain youth prodigy Mahamadou Sangaré is leaving to join Manchester City on a free transfer. Jules, how big a deal is this?
Well,
8 goals in 6 games in the youth league. Should I be impressed?
Yeah, he's very good. I don't know if Prodigy might be pushing it a little.
Maybe he leaves Paris Saint-Germain.
Maybe you were kind to him, but he was Paris born and bred, so he was one of mine. I liked him a lot. I watched him a lot at youth level. He felt that the pathway to the first team was not going to be there for him, and maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. I think he's very early, 18, to be able to tell. Maybe he was not happy with the terms that PSG were offering for his professional contract because he was there. So maybe he was just not happy with that. And I'm sure Man City, financially certainly, must have been very attractive as a proposition. So we will see. I'm always a little bit... They've been examples before of young players, not just from PSG, but coming from France to England, young age, 16. You can't do it at 16 anymore, but before you could, 16, 17, 18. I mean, even earlier than that, Adrien Rabiot was 14 when he went from Paris to Manchester City.
Which he wasn't really supposed to do, but he had to get an exemption for. But
yeah, exactly. So good luck to Mamadou. He's a really, really good player, and he's got everything.
What kind of a center forward? I mean, let's give City a bit of a profile.
Yeah.
What kind of a center forward is he?
I suspect for now is obviously for the youth team and the reserve team, not for the first team yet. But he's got good pace. He's a really good finisher. He's smart. He can play wide as well because he's good on the ball. But he's a finisher for me. So he's got really that kind of mindset. But he's a good pick, really.
Is he a big guy? Is he like a...
No, he's not. He's not strong physically, no. But he's all about being in the right position. He's got really good pace. He's good on the ball.
Is he a Marmouche? Is he closer to... He's closer to Marmouche than Haaland?
Yeah, definitely. But more of a 9 still than Marmouche, who I think can play in a different position. Yeah, but I guess Sangare can do that too. It's a bit hard to judge at youth level, really. Although the youth league this season was decent, I thought, and certainly he was good.
Is he a young Colomwani?
I think he's a bit more. Yeah. But he's better at his age than Rondal was at the same age, for sure. And where are we? The Times report that Manchester City, to stay with them, have filed paperwork demanding that details of shareholder loans by Premier League clubs be made public. Gab, what does this mean?
So this is all to do with the associated party transactions, where you remember Manchester City said, well, wait a minute, you guys are judging us based on deals that we do with associated parties, Etihad, and whatever else, sponsorship deals. Well, hang on, what happens when Brighton borrow more than 400 million from their owner at below market rates, right?
Yeah.
Because as far as we know, or we don't know exactly what the interest rate they're paying. As far as I know, I think it's been said that these are interest-free loans.
Yeah,
right?
they're 0%.
And they're saying, how is this different from a sponsorship? And I think it's actually City make a valid argument. Now, according to the Times, this paperwork that's been filed, first of all, they actually go into other clubs' accounts, and they mention, Arsenal getting 259 million, Everton 450 million, and then in 21-22, that was in 22-23, 21-22, Leicester 265 million, and Brighton 406.5 million. Without making this too boring, the idea is if Brighton, say, had to go to a bank to borrow the 406 million, most likely the bank would have said, no, or if they'd said yes, they would have demanded a very high interest rate, maybe north of 10%, 12%. And then Brighton would have had to pay an extra 40 million a year. So they're saying that should go into the calculation. I think that's
But that was not illegal what they did. No.
It's not by any stretch. It's not illegal. The books allowed you. They're saying the law is unfair.
Yeah.
This should be reported, and this should be treated the same way as you go in and when you evaluate our sponsorships. This should all be public, and the details of this should be made public. So I think actually City have a point on that. I think the way they're doing it, slightly sneaky, frankly, when they've already said that they're going to go and rewrite these deals. But hey, I think the broader thing is like if they have a bunch of lawyers on retainers and they want to make sure that these guys are in their keep. DC United have acquired the discovery rights for Paul Pogba.
Yeah.
Jules, does this mean we'll see him inside the Beltway soon?
It means that we could, and they've started talking to his entourage. The discovery right, and discovery is probably the right word, but the wrong context, because it sounds like the guy is unknown and you've discovered him somewhere in the streets of Paris, and then you think, oh, he's pretty good. It's not that.
This is American exceptionalism at its best. Discovery rights.
It means that you're, for now, the only club officially allowed to speak to Paul Pogba. I mean, there's other MLS franchises who've spoken to him already. But it also means that if he wants to go somewhere else and not to DC United, or if they can't find an agreement, then the other MLS team will have to pay a bit of money to DC United. So, for example, when the LA Galaxy signed Marco Reus, they didn't have the discovery rights, so they had to pay $400,000 to get him to be allowed to sign him. And
so they paid the team that discovered him by buying a television subscription and watching Borussia Dortmund.
So you know what I discovered, Gab, looking into this, because I thought it's quite fascinating because it doesn't exist anywhere else. Obviously, It's just in the US. You don't acquire rights when somebody has retired already. So for example, so you have to request the discovery rights for you and be the first one to do so to the league. And then they say, okay, Gab Marcotti, you can have the rights for Lamine Yamal, for example. So I wonder when do you make a move for Lamine Yamal, for example? Like if you're into Miami.
Presumably there's rules that cover. I mean, MLS love their rules. So I'm sure
they love their rules.
You can't go and discover 101
no,
players,
so
right?
you have a list, I think.
And you probably have to pay a fee for each one otherwise. Because otherwise everybody wants to discover Lamine Yamal.
Yeah, it could be 10 per list maybe. And the clubs don't want to make that list public. So this was obviously leaked that it was DC United. We know that Kevin De Bruyne, the rights are owned by Inter Miami. So yeah, I wonder who Columbus have rights for.
I was wondering too about where the term discovery comes from. And since MLS in its early incarnation, and I wrote my thesis in grad school on MLS, so I'm sure I've mentioned many, many times. I wonder if this term comes, maybe it's like an NBA term. I was thinking back to like when the NBA discovered Akeem Olajuwon, for example. And so it was kind of like, oh, look, they play basketball in other parts of the world. Let's discover the players. And maybe it's that. This is where it comes from.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's MLS. You should change your terminology here.
Yeah, and Paul is going to take his time anyway, so he's not.
He wants to stay in Europe too, doesn't he?
Yeah, ideally, he would like to still play in Europe and potentially in the Champions League club. Evangelos Marinakis, one of good friend of the show, as you know, has put Forest in a blind trust for next season at Gab. What does this mean and why is he doing it?
So Mr. Marinakis is doing this because you remember it's just to do with UEFA's multi-club ownership rules, 2 teams of the same ownership in the same competition. Now, UEFA are writing long-term rules that govern this, but until they can agree on the rules, they said, all right, in the meantime, we're going to have what we call a blind trust. So Manchester United had to do this as well with Nice, of course, because Ratcliffe also owns Nice, although, of course, he doesn't enjoy watching Nice.
No,
he doesn't
that's
enjoy
true. It's not
watching
good
Ligue.
enough.
The level's not good enough for his high standards. Not as exciting as
Milan and Toulouse, I believe.
Milan and Toulouse, of course, before that. Although, actually, I think that wasn't a blind trust. I think that was actually... I think they made a different argument on that one. I think this rule... But it's essentially you're saying, okay, I'm going to put these other people in charge. They're going to run it independently of me, right? Now, I read who he put, and so obviously Mr. Marinakis, longtime association with Olympiacos.
Yeah.
I think Forest fans, nobody will begrudge us if I tell you that he is more of an Olympiacos fan because that was his first love.
Yeah.
So he's saying he's going to continue with Olympiacos, and then he's putting Forest in a blind trust. But don't worry, because Mr. Marinakis is not leaving you, Forest fans. I looked at the people he put in, and it's his friend Socrates, who is his longtime, not Socrates Papastaropoulos, some other dude named Socrates. And it's 3 lawyers from a company that works for him.
Yeah.
So
it stays within the family very much.
I think Forest are safe. And if they need Mr. Marinakis' help, I'm sure he will be there.
Yeah.
Cheering them on at a safe and legal distance, and maybe occasionally expectorating, because that is entirely normal. If you cough, you might want to go and just spit on the ground, whether you're in your living room, whether you're in your bed. You ever spit in bed when you're lying in bed?
Or at a football stadium.
Or at a football stadium in the direction of a referee, of course. Marseille are unveiling a statue to former president Bernard Tapie. Jules, he did deliver the Champions League.
He did.
He bought Adidas. He did a whole bunch of different things. He was a major businessman. He also spent time in prison for fixing Marseille games, for changing the course, frankly, changing the course of Arsenal history, because I'm one of those people who believes that if he hadn't rigged the league in those years, Arsene Wenger might have never left Monaco. He might have won in Monaco, and he might have never gone to Japan, which meant he would have never gone to Arsenal.
Yeah.
But whatever. As a Paris Saint-Germain fan, I'm sure you're totally impartial on matters of Marseille. Are you okay with this? Everybody said, like, is this really the guy we want to honor, a convicted criminal, even though he's Macron's friend?
Yeah, I mean, he's a legend there, obviously. You saw when he passed away, the degree of the impact that they had on the city. I understand that. If you ask me, would I rather Didier Drogba statue instead of Bernard Tapie in Marseille? I would say yes. But he obviously had an incredible impact with that team in the good and in the not so good things. So
I'm sorry. Maybe you need to be impartial.
But also,
I don't need to be impartial here. This is disgraceful.
No,
because it's not.
I hear you.
We're not talking about somebody who is a convicted criminal because he did something in his other businesses. Although obviously he's had a lot of legal issues in that one too.
Oh,
Although
yeah, absolutely.
I think he won his biggest court case at the end, but whatever, right? We're not talking about that. Somebody who was a bit of a bad boy, but he loved his football so much. No. He committed his crimes. He was found guilty of committing his crimes at Marseille.
Yeah.
Right?
But
he was guilty of corruption at Marseille.
Yeah, no, but like statues are for legends, right? They should be for legends. And it's not like if this great club was short of legends that played for them or that managed them. Because you can look at Tapi. What about Raymond Goethals then, who won them the Champions League? More than Tapi, he was the guy, he was the coach, he was the guy on the bench, and like Tapi built the squad and spent the money. Okay, I get that. But if Tapi has a statue, Goethals deserves a statue as much as Tapi, even more. Because there is no negative from Goethals' time in football or at Marseille, apart from smoking too much maybe. But that's it. So
has there been a debate within Marseille about saying, like, guys,
I don't think
is there an acknowledgement that's saying, guys, we cheated with at least one of those league titles and we were found guilty, and but that's not in question. Glassman's a real person. Is he still alive?
Yeah,
you can go ask him. Has anybody asked him how he feels about this?
No, I don't think so. But no. I think there's still 3 weeks before it's unveiled, which will be May the 16th, I think, or less than 3 weeks. And maybe the closest we get to that, maybe the debate will open. I'll let you know.
And final point on this, because I know obviously people in Serie A are going to come out of woodwork and talk about Juve and stuff like that. First of all, there's no statue to Luciano Moggi at Juve. Secondly, what Luciano Moggi was convicted of is nowhere near what Bernard Tapie was convicted of. Luciano Moggi never went to prison. You know, some people might say he should have and stuff. This is a straight bribery case with money being buried in somebody's back garden. Go and look this up. It's a fascinating thing.
It is.
And, you know, for years, even though, look, I'll sometimes make fun in a good way, I hope, of Arsene Wenger. He, not just him, all of French football was the victim of this.
Yeah,
but it changed everything.
Yeah, for sure. Julen Lopetegui is the new coach of Qatar. Gab, we know you're a big fan.
A big fan of Qatar, yes. The future of football. Sorry. I'm a big Lopetegui fan. I think he's a very good coach. Evidently,
so what happened there?
Felt the need to cash in. Well, obviously things didn't work out at West Ham.
But he got a big payoff, so he doesn't need money, really.
Well, you know what? Julen Lopetegui was a number 3 goalkeeper, right?
Yeah.
Those guys don't make a lot of money.
True.
Honestly, go to Scott Carson's house.
Yeah.
Like, see what car he drives.
That's why he's still there on the bench.
He's still there on the bench. So maybe he feels the need to make more money. Like, I think Qatar, you get big resources. You go to the World Cup. I am disappointed. I would have liked to see him in Europe. I also think it's, okay, you screwed up at West Ham, but somebody would have taken you. You know, you had a chance to relaunch yourself.
Of course.
This often feels to me like a failure, but I don't know if it's still Uncle George who looks after him. Feels like it probably should be. I suspect it may be. And people got paid. Good luck to him. Jules, you're one of those people who watches the UEFA Youth League
I do.
Intently. We need to give a shout out because they played the final. I'm going to start with the losing finalists because it's not a team that we talk about very often or ever, even within the context of Turkish football. We don't talk about
That's right, yeah.
Trabzonspor reaching the final, losing to Barcelona, who we do talk about all the time. Does this beckon like a bright future for Trabzonspor?
Yeah, they've got a good young generation. I believe. I mean, I don't really watch them that much, and I didn't watch them apart from the final in this competition. But they look good. Earlier on, it was a campaign with quite a lot of surprises. To be fair, although Barcelona winning it is not a surprise. They've been by far the better team. Not that they're winning every year, but they have been very good this year. They've got.
Imagine if Yamal and Kubarsi had been playing in that team,
which they are technically still available for. To be fair, Alexander Walton, who's a young English player who plays for Barcelona youth team. Won it, very good, but I guess the start of the show has to be Ibrahim Diarra, who's from Mali, who's 18, who only made his debut in March for this team and had 2 goals and 1 assist in the final. If you watch the the last under-17 World Cup, he was excellent with Mali, silver boot. Just ahead of Matisse Amougou, who Chelsea signed from Saint-Etienne and sent to Strasbourg. So, yeah, it's a very good, again, generation from the Barcelona youth team. And imagine that the men can win the Champions League, the women can win the Champions League, the under-19 have already won the Champions League, and I think both 3 teams can still win the treble in in the season too, because I think the under 19s can win the cup and the league. Same with the women, with the Champions League, and same with the men as well.
And when that happens, Joao Laporta
Can you
sends
imagine,
directly into heaven in fulfillment of Scripture.
Don't you think for a club still with a lot of financial issues, this is pretty, whether we like them or not, whether we like Laporta, and Laporta is not responsible for any of this anyway, let's be honest. But I still
He'll
find
take
it
credit.
incredible. In the worst financial form of their history, or kind of, on the pitch, is probably the best they've ever been. All the teams are winning.
I think this speaks to the professionalism, to the competence of, especially on the women's side, and also obviously the youth side, right? Because it's slightly different with the first team, because you are acquiring players and so on, and obviously there's competence there too. It's been fantastic and whatever. But at youth level, I think the big difference is, let's face it, again, lifting the lid on how youth football works. Younger players, people say, "Oh, look, La Masia, look, they form, they develop." Yeah, they teach, they develop. But they can't take an average 12-year-old and turn him into somebody who can play professionally. Nobody can do that, right? So everybody attracts players, and then it's a question of what you do with them, and it's a question of how good you are at attracting talented youngsters, and then what you do with them when they're there. And it's just like for every club. And, Ranieri and Luis Skelly, I assume, are from London. They might have signed for Spurs or Chelsea or Palace or whatever, right? So that's a testament to the professionalism of all these men and women behind the scenes on the men's game and in the women's side, who are going out and doing this. And this is something Barcelona should be totally proud of. It's something that Laporta can't take away. The people before him can't take away. Nobody can take this away from you. This is tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and by the way, it's Ibrahim Adjar is a center forward, right?
Yeah.
It's perfect timing. Just as Lewandowski gets old,
Yeah.
he steps into the first team.
Yeah.
Can you believe Lamine Yamal looks at him and says like, "Oh yeah, old man, get out of my way."
He's older than Lamine. Gab, let me take you all the way back to Sunday and the Super Classico in Argentina. River beat Boca 2-1, and there's a kid even younger than Lamine Yamal, to talk about him, who is making headlines.
Yeah, we felt the need to needlessly hype 16-year-olds, but this is a bit special. Also, his free kick has gone viral. Franco Mastantuono, who I'm just going to guess from the name, I think Spalletti should get on the phone and naturalize him immediately.
He has an Italian passport already.
He should play for Italy right now. Like, honestly, call him up. No, he won't, because this guy, he has a 50 million release clause, starts in the Super Classico. He is younger than Lamine Yamal by a month, but still younger than Lamine Yamal. Scored a ridiculous free kick. I think it's 3 goals and 8 starts for him. He looks a number 10 type to me, from what I could see.
Left-footed.
Used to be a tennis player, apparently.
Very
gifted tennis player. He's got a good build. Mastantuono versus Yamal the next 10 years.
He had his geography exam at school, and Marcelo Gallardo, who is back at River as the coach, called the school and asked if he could miss school and the exam to prepare for the Super Classico. They said yes, obviously.
Preferential treatment. I don't like that. I don't like that.